Let me say that if you write stories of any kind, fan fiction or otherwise, and you post your work onto the internet for all to see, you are a very brave person. Really, you are. Any content maker, really, be they stories, articles, videos, music, etc., who actually puts forth the love and effort into said works, and are brave enough to submit them for our entertainment or subject them to our scrutiny, they are definitely worthy of praise. Now, other people have posted some really great articles about how to be a polite content maker and accept criticism or rejection gracefully. Some people have written about dealing with hate or trolls and to tell the difference between a troll comment and actual constructive criticism. Those things are quite helpful, if you are actually getting attention. But what about those writers of fanfics that aren't? That are suffering from a different thing altogether? A lack of feedback or attention. There might be some articles or videos about how to get more attention, but this is not one of them. I might have some tips or something, but what we are really dealing with here today is the sad fact that sometimes you can be doing everything right. Your story could be something interesting and worth reading. You could be a polite, good commenter and an upstanding member of whatever website you're on. But sometimes, even following all the rules and going through everything with a fine-tooth anti-troll comb, your story can be met with a giant wall of silence and apathy. You may feel like it's your fault, like it's something you've done or not done. Is the story not interesting? Is my description, title, cover image not punchy enough? And those could be factors, but how about when you fixed all those possible flaws and yet you still aren't getting really any love? Since I am a fellow writer/internet content provider, I have been where you are now, and I feel confident enough to give you this list of things that you should not do when faced with this situation. Number 7. Don't completely blame yourself. Yes, I add that little extra word in there. Because, to be honest, sometimes there are things that might contribute to a lack of interest in your story. Poor grammar or spelling in the summary, or a summary that's too vague or maybe too complicated. Notice, though, that these things are easily fixable. So, let's say that you've checked the summary and it's perfectly fine. You've had your pre-reader and a few other people look it over and they weren't confused by it. What might be the problem still? Well, this is something you might find in most of these list items, I'm afraid. People are fickle. Yep. As much as we are taught as children to not judge a book by its cover, that might actually be what people are doing. You could change the cover too, but sometimes people will just like and dislike things for the weirdest reasons. But we'll get to that. If you accept this fact here at the start, we can move on to the other list items with this lovely little golden nugget of truth. There are probably tens of thousands of stories on the site that you've posted your stuff, and maybe about 100 of those might have plots similar to yours. That doesn't make it unoriginal because, nothing is original anymore. And out of all the possible readers on the site, maybe only just a few of those might actually want to read the type of story you're writing or about the characters you're writing about. Number 6. Don't self-deprecate in your author's notes, especially not in your story. Be confident. This is your story. You wrote it. Own up to it and don't apologize for every little aspect of it. Sure, if you're a new writer, you could make a comment about that in your author's notes, or if you don't have a pre-reader yet, you could explain that as the reason you could have skipped some typos, but don't be a Fluttershy about your work. Okay? If it's something you're proud of, be proud of it. You actually don't have to put an author's note at all if you don't want. If there's something interesting about the chapter or I feel I need to explain something, usually I just post a link to my blog and, that explains everything. Back in 2011, just after Return of Harmony Part 2 aired, like literally the night it aired, I wrote what became the first scene of a fanfic I'm proud of and mostly sort of still happy with. The thing was, though, I did not have as much confidence in my writing as I do now. And of course, the amount I have now, I probably shouldn't. This particular story had my very first attempt at a kissing scene, so that made me extra nervous about it. I ended up leaving an author's note that was nearly the same length as the story itself. In it, I apologized over and over and tried to explain why I did what I did. It was like I was laying my writing down at the feet of the mighty leader of the horde of flamers, trying to meekly and weakly cower away before he ripped me to shreds. The thing is, though, after I posted it, nobody cared. The readers didn't actually need my lengthy apology explanation. The ones that liked it, and the ones that didn't. Nobody ripped me apart or even really complained about the kiss. A couple of people said it actually went pretty naturally. So when in doubt, just go ahead and leave the author's note box empty. Background stuff like story explanations can go in blog posts. Blog posts. Even if you aren't completely confident in your story or writing expertise, guess what? Sometimes a lack of extraneous things like that make you seem more mysterious and therefore appear more confident. Number 5. Don't spam threads or groups with links. Or at least choose your moments carefully. Sure, self-promotion is important, but we all should know that there is a difference between giving yourself a little signal boost and making a pest of yourself. If you just added your Apple Dash story to the Apple Dash group, there might be a thread in their forum to give you a little bump for it. There are probably other good appropriate places to advertise, like your own blogs or sites, or ask a friend to give a link to his or her blog or site. Maybe you can do a trade where they post about your story if you post about theirs. Share the love and keep the friendship going, right? What you should not be doing is going to random threads or barely connected threads or other random and possibly connected sites and just linking to your story with a comment like, "Hey, check out my story, it's blah 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 blah." Especially if you had the blah 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 part, that makes you look like you suddenly lost control of your fingers. And even the more casual, "Hey, you like blank? I like blank. I wrote this story if you want to check it out." It is better, but it still sort of smells like, "The only reason I am here is to post this link to my glorious story. I care not for what is really being discussed or what this comment is actually attached to." Usually I've noticed that mentioning the story is pretty much all that's needed. Any interested parties will inquire for a link on their own, and again, that's only outside of a link posting thread and only where appropriate. Only where appropriate. Number 4. Don't assume your story is bad because of lack of comments. Remember that big important truth I mentioned earlier? That little golden nugget of truth? People are fickle? Well, guess what? It's coming into play again here. All of your readers are also fellow humans like yourself, or any other sentient being with emotions and thoughts that of a human. So they are also prone to whatever type of thing might keep you from commenting sometimes. Are there stories you just sort of glance at and maybe like, but not enough to leave a comment? Are there stories that you really enjoy, but don't really have a lot to say about, or can't find a good way to articulate your feelings? Do you sometimes feel like if you've commented on one chapter, you probably don't have to comment on all of them, especially if it's a long story? Sometimes, do you just feel shy about leaving a comment for whatever reason? Guess what? Those people reading your stories all have the potential to be feeling those feels too. Sometimes it's not, "Ew, I hate this, no comment for you." Or, "Meh, no clop, I'm bored." Sometimes it could just be one of those things I mentioned above, or something else entirely. Comments don't always equal success or popularity of a story. You might be thinking that the like/dislike buttons are the things that really determine that, but yeah. Again, not always. Number 3. Don't worry so much about the likes or dislikes. This is also an area where people can be just fickle little boogers. Some people, like me, will hit the like button on every story that I find interesting enough to read at least one chapter of, regardless of if I faved it or not. But I always hit like on a faved story. As far as dislikes go, some people, again, me, might regard that thumbs down as tantamount to a slap in the face. Some people would have to really, really just hate a story, or find it personally offensive in some way to hit that dislike button. Some people, though, are a bit more free with their thumbs downs, and hit it because they are genuinely giving it some thought and providing a critique on the story. I had one such occurrence fairly recently, and it was almost like seeing a real live unicorn trot up to me and offer me a time turner. That's because I think this might be something of a rarity on any writing site, especially fan fiction. By that I mean a person that's willing to give you an honest, well thought out review of your story and an explanation as to why they are giving it a thumbs down. I feel like I handled it alright, although I probably could have been more confident. I didn't rage flame him though. I sent him an equally well thought out reply by private message. Though, in retrospect, I think I might have been better to just accept the criticism without saying anything. You will have much more frequent random dislike people. The ones who are far too trigger happy with that red button. Oh, this is a romance, sad, slice of life, other genre I don't like? Dislike! Oh, it's a shipping fic with character A and character I don't want with character A? Dislike! Oh, it has more likes than my possibly similar story? Dislike! Oh, I'm just going through the front page randomly hitting the dislike button on every story I see? Dislike! I'm not saying that stuff happens all the time or that your red bar consists only of those. I'm just saying that I've been around the internet long enough to think it's a distinct possibility. Or at least a contributing factor. Number 2. Don't hold your story hostage. Now, I have never done this. I've seen it done before, though. Writers who decide that they absolutely must have validation from their readers in order to write. Guys, I am not going to write any more of this story unless I get like 10 comments or likes or faves on this chapter, okay? Here's where I'm going to be a little bit blunt. This is a dumb idea. You may think that you deserve this many likes or comments or faves and that this sort of ultimatum gives you power, but it doesn't. Actually, it puts the power in the hands of your readers. Those same readers that you are kind of extorting to get what you want. They may genuinely like your story, but when you demand something like that, you just kind of come off sounding like an entitled bratty diva. Every like, comment, or fave you get is a gift, okay? Nobody made those people do those things. They did it because they enjoyed what you have to offer. So revel in that. Even if it's not as many or as much as you'd like to think your story deserves. Not to sound like a mom, but hey, there are other writers who probably don't even have half the love from readers that you do. Plus, look at the fellow writers you admire, or even professionals. Do they ever hold their content hostage? What if J.K. Rowling did that? Yeah, sorry fans, I've written the next Harry Potter book, but you don't get it until I have 1 million likes on whatever social networking site was big in the early 2000s. Holding out for more readers' love also tells me that you might be writing your story for the wrong reasons. Or for the wrong person. Which leads me to my final point. Number 1. Don't give up on your story. You are not, or at least you shouldn't be, writing your story to please other people. You might be writing to try and entertain others with what you already want to write. But the one person you should always aspire to make happy with your work is you. So you post the first few chapters and don't get much of a nibble. That's fine. If you are confident in yourself and that you have done the best you can with your story, if you love your story and think it's worth reading, then you've already won. Remember that one lesson letter to Celestia? Something about, if you try and please every pony, you end up pleasing no pony? Wise words indeed. Just like the little golden nugget of truth that people are fickle, people are also different. They might have different tastes than you. So trying to cater to every sort of reader ever is gonna just leave you tired, frustrated, and with a cluttered mess of a story that you just don't care about anymore. Writing your stories for yourself is also the best way to battle that wall of apathy. It's okay that my story isn't getting a lot of love. I'm still proud of it, and I'm not ashamed of it because I worked hard. Plus, eventually your story might be discovered by some like-minded individuals later on down the line. And you wouldn't want to disappoint them by not finishing or deprive them the joy of discovering the story at all by deleting it, would ya? Following through and seeing a story to the end takes perseverance. And even if you don't get a lot of love, that perseverance will probably be noticed by someone. You don't want to be the author who leaves their story unfinished. Because you might get comments from people like me years later going, OMG, where did you go? I want to know what happens. Trust me, I've been on both sides of that scenario, and neither one makes you feel good. Now, you aren't going to always have the drive to continue your story, but you should probably fight that urge. Because the middle part is usually when it starts to get difficult. And if a story problem pops up, don't just roll over, work it out. Somehow, you know? Just keep swimming, I guess, to use another cliche. Just keep swimming. This is Ckat saying AOLFC.